And you may have heard an awful lot today about an interview where the Prime Minister sat down with Ben Fordham on 2GB Breakfast in Sydney. You may have heard little slices of it and even heard Ben with Sharry a bit earlier this evening. But if you weren't in Sydney or haven't had the chance to have a look at it, I actually wanted to play you some big chunks from this interview because they show you the many personalities of Albo. Firstly, this one where he gets just a little cranky.
And what if 12 months down the track, the Voice says, we want to change the date of Australia Day? What do you say as Prime Minister?
What we say is that we have no plans to change Australia Day.
You'll say no?
We say we have no plans, absolutely. And what's made
but
clear,
you'll say to the Voice no?
Of course we will. If we don't agree with them, of course we will.
You know, you're asking people to vote yes, but then when the Voice asks for something, a lot of the time I'm guessing you're going to say no. Yes or no, will the Voice be able to speak directly to the RBA?
Well, I can't talk directly to the RBA board.
So no?
And I'm the Prime Minister. No, Ben.
Okay.
And people know the idea. No, Ben, what this is about...
No, hang on. You've answered that. I've got a few more that I've got to get through. Thomas Mayo says the Voice will help to tear down institutions, pressure governments to pay the rent, pay reparations and compensation, and punish politicians who fail to deliver. So I'm keen to know, what does pay the rent mean?
Well, I disagree with that. But
are there going to be reparations?
No, Ben.
Surely, as part of the Uluru Statement, we have a voice, we have treaty, we have truth-telling. As part of a treaty, won't there be compensation? If there is, I mean, that's not totally unexpected.
This isn't about a treaty, Ben.
But there are three parts of the Uluru Statement.
Yeah, and this is not...
So you're talking about the Voice.
This is not about a treaty.
But as part of treaty, which we guess will be a following step...
This is not about a treaty.
Do you foresee that compensation would be paid?
This is not about a treaty. This isn't about that.
But remember, there's 3 steps by the Prime Minister's very own language. It's voice first, then it's treaty, then it's truth-telling. He made the decision to follow that line of the 3 things that needed to be done because presumably a voice to Parliament would be able to give better information to a government about how it could negotiate a treaty or set up the rules for, say, a standing royal commission about truth-telling. But the gaslighting, it just continues all the way around this particular interview. The Prime Minister is so used to being in formats for the past few years where the journalists just nod back at him that when he even gets the slightest bit of pushback, he crumbles. He's got a glass jaw, this bloke.
When you have a look at those numbers, it's falling through the floor. So why not use your power as Prime Minister? You won the election. No, legislate the Voice and let us vote on recognition, and Australia will overwhelmingly say yes any day of the week.
Will they, Ben? Will they, Ben?
Yes.
Because the former government had the opportunity.
No, talk about now. Yes, they will.
No, we have had Parliament has dealt with the House of Representatives and the Senate. And I tell you what...
Australians will say yes to recognition. I tell you what Australians
will have the opportunity
Are you doubting that?
That is what Australians will have the opportunity to do between October and December.
But if they don't like the Voice and they vote against the Voice...
But the Voice... But... Ben, you have a responsibility as well, can I say this, to talk about what the Voice is about, not raise red herrings. You know full well that if this is successful and there's a Voice, you know it won't have a right of veto.
I understand
You know that it won't
I'm worried about it failing, PM.
Well, get on board, Ben.
Guess what?
Guess what? You're in a position to make a difference and to help it succeed, as are other people in the media, by talking about what it's about, not by raising things that are not going to be relevant. What Thomas Mayo or any individual thinks.
I've got a duty to listen to Jacinta Price just as much as I've got a duty to listen to Anthony Albanese.
And I've got no problem with that at all.
But of course, Jacinta Price is not allowed to debate with his very minister. You see, this is the whole slipperiness of Albo. Now, it works when you're the opposition leader because all you've got to do is basically bash, bash, bash. But he made the decision not to legislate the Voice. He decided that we were going to have a referendum. But he didn't come up with the question until months after he had made that early promise. And still even today, we don't know the date that it's going to be. He claims that that's because the AEC needs adequate time to prepare. Well, it's a yes-no question that'll be held in every state in the country. It's a yes-no question. A federal election, you have 33 days' notice. At the last election, there were 1,400 candidates that ran in 151 different seats. That's variables. This is yes and no. Now, he made the decision for this thing to go into the Constitution because, yes, that's what the Uluru Statement wanted. But he also knows that it's very difficult to get more than half of the country to agree to, yes, no, we'll give you the details after. There isn't a draft piece of legislation that he has produced, and I hope he does, that is the voice that will be able to go into Parliament the day after the referendum is successful. He has created the vacuum in which other people, yes, are pushing at times information that is not relevant to the conversation. But if you're going to sit down and do an interview with somebody, guess what? They're allowed to ask you questions. And you can't get the Harry hits when it's not just the talking points you want them to say. Here's a bit more.
I make this point because I know where you're reading from. You're reading from the No pamphlet.
I'm not reading. Excuse me, Prime Minister.
Well, that's in the No pamphlet.
Excuse me.
Well, that quote is in the No pamphlet.
Excuse me.
Well, it is.
I am not reading from the No pamphlet. I'm reading from my own questions that I have written. No, I'm on a flow
well,
here.
When you finish...
You've just accused me of reading from a pamphlet.
No, I didn't. So I said those quotes are from the No pamphlet, which they are.
Right.
And then when all else fails, Albo thinks if you just throw a little more Toto magic at it and just smile, everyone will agree with you.
It isn't about anything else. It's not about treaty. It's not about compensation. It's simply about listening in order to get better outcomes. And, you know, I'm going to Marrickville Public School now. That was a school a few years ago, really, really struggled. It had 30-something students in the school. There was talk of closure. You know what happened? They got some principals who went out there and have, over a period of time, same with the high school there that's now full, they asked the local community, they involved the parents, they listened to what the community wanted. That's how you get better outcomes, by listening. That's what the referendum's about. That's what the voice is about. And respect.
I'll give you an easy one to finish on as you prepare for the spelling bee. How do you spell yes?
Y-E-S.
We appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Ben.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Fair dinkum. It's today the day that the voice died. If it did, it's because of Anthony Albanese. It's because of his inability to argue what he doesn't trust his own ministers to argue. His assumption was that the vibe would be enough, the advertising will do the rest. But it is quite reasonable for people to have whatever questions they do. Because in a democracy, the about 16 million people who are on the roll, might be a little more than that now, they all have the right to know as much or as little as they want. And somebody who wants to push for as much detail as possible is not just reading off the no song sheet.